So be it. Jedi. He's no good to me dead.
You will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
You know what's going on?
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Star Wars After Hours. It's a little bit different this week because there is no Stefan. We've both been busy with work and all that stuff, and it's kind of difficult to get it all coordinated sometimes. So I'm just going to do a solo in commemoration, if that's the word, of Solo. I'm going to do a solo podcast. So I have a few questions in here. Hold on 1 second. Messing with levels. Okay. So I got a few questions. I have the chat open, so you can ask me anything. And as you can tell, it is late for me and I'm tired, but I wanted to get this out. So let me address some things here. I'm just going to look through these questions and see if the live stream is even working. Hold on 1 second. Okay, cool. Cool, it's working. So, I have a few questions. One coming in right here, right now. So, I'm starting out, and these are all from my friend Royce, from my coworker at Daniels Woodland. So I'm going to address a few of these. Who is my favorite character's costume? So that's kind of tough because it's like, is that the alien or human or either one? I really like just Stormtrooper armor. It's pretty interesting. I love Darth Vader's armor. I like how it changes over time, and there's some explanation to why it changes, but it's mostly fan theories and things like that, and things that are just put into comic books and Star Wars Rebels and stuff like that. So I think I'm gonna go with Darth Vader. And my favorite costume, as in production wise, I guess it's more of a puppet, but technically it's a costume, I guess. Jabba the Hutt in Return of the Jedi. That's very impressive. Very impressive puppetry, and that's something that I'm really interested in. Let's see. Why can Leia fly? Okay. So I've seen I've seen a lot of, I don't know, I guess I could say, I don't know, I think most of us have seen the Star Wars forums and things like that complaining about Leia being able to fly and her being Mary Poppins or whatever. And I think that it actually takes very little very little strength to do something like that, because not only is there no resistance in space, not not the resistance, but no friction, nothing. You can push something and it will just go into infinity unless it's acted upon with a from a different source or a different force. So I think that if I could break it down, she could easily force pull or whatever, like pool particles in the air, parts of the ship that were destroyed, and just from those little, like little boosts that kind of got her there to the ship. So I guess that kind of is my thought on why Leia could fly. I mean, it's just in space, so it really doesn't take that much effort. Well, it takes the Force, but not as much effort as it would seem in other situations of using the Force. Okay, next question. What happened to C-3PO's arm? I know it says that. I think he says that somewhere. I think he gave it up as a sacrifice to another droid that needed an arm or something like that, or other vice versa. I don't remember. I'd have to look that up and check that out. Let's see what else I have. Well, I can go with what's your all-time favorite Star Wars scene and why? So I'll have to break that down into a few, and I'll do it for each movie, I think, because that's a good question. I can kind of go on with that. So for the original Star Wars, Episode 4, New Hope, the Battle of Yavin, the whole destruction of the Death Star, everything that went with that. I liked those scenes because they were so closely related to like World War II footage, and some things actually came straight out of World War II films, and George Lucas even used some World War II footage of fighter planes and things like that and dogfights to replace kind of the action scenes and the space scenes that he hadn't created yet. So he took a lot of liberties with different movies, and kind of even used some dialogue from a different movie, just because it kind of sounds military. And I'm not sure if it is right, because I'm not in the military or in the Air Force or Army Air Corps or whatever. But I like that scene because of the World War II influence, and it's realistic, and I like how they did it. If you look into the actual model and everything. They had actual little explosions going off on a model with, with a huge film camera on wires just swooping down as they set off little explosions. And it's crazy because it's like you only have one shot on destroying this thing, this piece that they actually just took a bunch of different models and stuff, like actual model kits. It's called kit bashing, where you take apart different things and put them all together in different ways and create things. And they did that with a lot of the Star Wars props from the beginning, and then they kind of just made molds of them and modified them over time. And it's funny how it's not like it was accidental, but there's things that we look at now like they were, they're supposed to be like this the whole time. George Lucas, had this all planned out exactly like this, but most of the ideas, I'm sure, came from just what they could find. Like the look of the lightsabers, things like that. They go to a junk shop and they find a flash, the handle for a camera flash for a camera, and then they're like, oh, well, we'll just use this as a lightsaber hilt. So it's things like that that kind of leads to, that's my, I don't know, my favorite scene, I think, is the Death Star trench and everything, that especially because of all of the effects and everything that went into that, all of the practical effects in 1977 or 76, whenever they filmed that sequence. So I think that's really impressive, especially when they build this huge model, and it's all flat because of course they're not going to make a huge a big like Death Star just for close-ups like that. They had different Death Star models and they were really big still, but the Death Star trench model, like the miniature and everything, is really impressive. It's impressive for the time, and it's impressive for even now. They don't do that anymore. They just use computers, and I know it's not easy, but it feels like the easy way out. And it looks more realistic. It's easier to make look real. But yeah, that's one of my favorite scenes in that one. And then hold on one second. I have a malfunction. It's my mouse. Okay. Sorry about that. So my second favorite scene in Star Wars is the Battle of Hoth. The the battle of the Echo Base, and with the AT-AT walkers and the AT-STs and snow troopers and all that. I just love the aesthetic of that. Just and the type of battle it was, where it was just like they have these little snow speeders that there's no way that they can get through the armor of the AT-ATs. So they have to figure out a way, just kind of on the fly, figure out, just use the tow cables to get the legs. And it's they came up with that idea pretty quick in the movie, but if you think about that in a real situation, in warfare, you have to make decisions and come up with plans, within minutes notice, really. And it is a difficult thing with battle, and there are a lot of casualties in that battle scene, and they lose. They have to run away, and a lot of them die. So it's a powerful scene, but also it's like a cool scene, like just because it's giant robots getting taken out by little planes and people on the ground. There's trench warfare like World War I, and there's you're in the snow caves, and there's big monsters around there, so you don't know. It's completely unpredictable what's going to happen. So I think that's my second favorite scene in all of Star Wars. Then I'll go to Return of the Jedi. I would just say that whole final sequence with Luke and Vader and the Emperor, obviously before it was edited to say no, so because that was a little cheesy. I actually have this version. It's called the despecialized version. So you should check it out, because basically it's the full trilogy, the original trilogy, but it's been modified where it's taken out some of the special features, the special edition, all of those added things in there. So you can kind of watch it's not this theater release, but you can watch it kind of it's the closest we can get, really, to something that's good and watchable without any of that, in Blu-ray quality, without any of that extra CG and different music. And so that's kind of a cool thing, because you can see what the original effects look like. And I had also, in the Cloud City scene, there's a lot of windows that were added afterward. It was kind of interesting to see how much is added in that you don't even notice. It's just like adding walls or something, adding some random ship in the background, adding animals. Some of them they went overboard, but I think that I'll just keep going with my favorite scenes, even though this is probably boring. My other scene, I would say, I'll go on the prequels. Darth Maul. Just Darth Maul and versus Qui-Gon. So Darth Maul versus Qui-Gon, I really like the point where he is, where Darth Maul is kind of walking back and forth, and he's just like gritting his teeth, and he's pissed off, and he wants to kill Qui-Gon, and he's dead set against it. And he or against him, I guess, I don't know, whatever, but he is just walking back and forth while those little shield doors are down, and then you have Qui-Gon kneeling with his eyes closed, and this is purposely done, but it's very samurai. I love how he has the hair is like a samurai, and it's just a kind of a nod to Japanese films with Akira Kurosawa and things like that, and just the samurai culture in itself, from what we know of it, mostly fictional, but you know what I mean. And so I really like that he just kind of had the patience, and he was just kneeling there, and he was figuring out his next moves and his attacks. And it was sad to see him go, that he was taken off guard, and bashed in the face and just impaled. And then I do like the fight between Darth Maul and Obi-Wan, especially that exact point where he gets cut in half, where Maul gets cut in half. And just the music, the Duel of the Fates is one of my favorite songs out of Star Wars. And then we're going to go to Attack of the Clones. Any part with Jango Fett in it. I really enjoyed that, and also the interaction between Jango Fett and Boba Fett. I kind of like that because you go back and see who Boba Fett is, where he came from, and why he's so good at killing, basically. He's a natural-born killer, and it's interesting to see him in his kind of naive look, but he is taught everything, it seems like, because he just picks right up from where his father left off doing that bounty hunter stuff, and he knows where to go. He can pilot the ship, he can do all of those things, and I really wish we could have seen more in the Clone Wars series, animated series. There was a little standoff, I believe it was against Cad Bane, that was cut, and that kind of sucks. That would have been really cool. They showed it at, I think it was a Star Wars Celebration or something like that, and it explains why Boba Fett has the blaster mark in his helmet, and so yeah, I like that. Jango Fett, Boba Fett, all that stuff. Then Revenge of the Sith. Even though it's a little cheesy, the beginning of the movie, that the first space battle, is pretty cool. It's a really good opening because it just throws you right into the battle, and there's some parts that are really cheesy, but a lot of the dialogue that's cheesy. But that's kind of how the prequels went, and that's kind of a lot of Star Wars has cheesy dialogue, but it's always got a great story behind it. And let's go to we'll go to Rogue One. Of course, my favorite scene is the ending scene when Darth Vader boards the ship and just tears it up. It's in the dark, everything's quiet, you just hear the creaking of the ship, and then you just see the red behind him, the red igniting saber, and it's just so powerful. It was, I think, the only scene in Star Wars that's given me that holy shit moment, like really like stand up and like almost stand up and say like holy shit, like that's insane. And that's kind of obvious that they like threw out every force power that he could use pretty much in one hallway. He just slaughters a bunch of people, and I love Darth Vader, so that's a perfect scene. I like that a lot. Then in The Force Awakens, I would say my favorite scenes, this will probably be more than one. First one would be first one I can think of is that the fight between Kylo Ren and Rey on Starkiller Base, and the one thing that I really like, or there's two things. There's two things that I really like. One of them is the look of the lightsabers when they go into the snow, and it like there's like the steam coming up from the snow, and it's just how they did the lighting effects for that, and that was really cool. I liked how there was the red glow and the blue glow, and it's very symbolic. So I think that that's one of my favorites in that, and then the other part of that is, the trees falling around them just slicing trees in half, and even when Finn picks up the lightsaber, and just that that whole dialogue, that scene, and even though he loses, it's still like he had the passion to just go fight the most powerful person in the galaxy, that we knew of at that time. And that was pretty ballsy. And then it was kind of interesting seeing him in The Last Jedi being so hesitant, and him just wanting to get out, and then he decides that he wants to make a sacrifice, and he almost kills himself, basically. And I'm curious to what the difference difference it would have made in that situation, because Luke came and saved the day anyways. So if they let him die, then it would be useless. And then the other scene in The Force Awakens, I would say, is just that opening scene. It was very different than all of the other Star Wars opening scenes, other than Rogue One, but it was interesting to start out in the stormtrooper's point of view, and then immediately kind of be acquainted with Finn, and the whole symbolism behind it, having the red on his face, and he's marked. You can tell that he is outside of their system. He doesn't really believe in what he's fighting for, and he doesn't want to be there, and that's kind of obvious. I'm guessing that a lot of stormtroopers don't really like what they're doing, but it's that moment, when the really emotional moment, when the other trooper dies, and it's sad because it brings reality to Star Wars. It's my friend just died next to me, and he's a stormtrooper. You always think of like stormtroopers almost as robots. They pick them off all the time, but then when you can see someone's face and they get killed, it's not that big of a deal. It's like kind of funny. Well, not funny. It's just kind of weird to think about who is okay to kill on movies and TV shows that are not completely targeted, but they are partly targeted toward children, and they want them to be kind of good, clean, fun, kind of, but there is some realism to it, but it's just showing like the types of things that could happen, what can't happen, what's okay to show. Like Star Wars Rebels, there's a lot of violence and things that happen that they could not get away with in live action, and it's just weird how many people. I know that some people get stunned or knocked out or whatever, but they kill so many stormtroopers, and all of them. They just go through and they're just taking out stormtroopers, and we're like, yeah, it's almost like they're robots, and it's kind of funny how that did continue into the prequels with the droid army, and then in the clones, it's like, okay, they can die because they're clones. They don't really have a family, and they're bred for that. So we can't feel bad about them dying, you know? And I think it really kind of it makes it real. It kind of distances itself from all of the other, Star Wars not stereotypes, but how that whole system of how there needs to be a reason why you don't care that they're dying. And it sounds weird, but it's something you have to think about when you're, doing movies with ratings and just getting emotional responses from an audience. And that scene in The Force Awakens really changed Star Wars, to be honest. It gave gave you a little bit of sympathy for stormtroopers, and you saw that they are not robots, and they actually matter, and all of the lives seem to matter more in The Force Awakens, and there's so much more emotion in everyone that dies. And that's one thing I didn't see in The Last Jedi. It was very impersonal, I think, with some of the deaths. I really like how they dealt with Rose's sister. I can't remember her name right now, but with that whole situation, it does make you kind of care about it. But for the rest of the battle, a ton of people die. Everyone dies basically, and it's not as emotional as it should be. Just Admiral Akbar dying alone, that should have been more. Oh, looks like I'm getting a call. Let me pause this. Okay. Sorry about that. I'm back. I'm hoping that didn't come through the whole speakers in the live stream, but that's okay. So, I need to end this podcast because I am tired and I have to go pick up my girlfriend from work. So, thank you for watching this solo podcast. And next time we'll have Stefan. It'll be more interesting. So, and I'll most likely not have to worry with these internet issues I've been having. So, thank you for watching or listening. Go to StarWarsAfterHours.com for all of our links for everything. Go to audibletrial.com/StarWarsAfterHours for a free trial, 30 days. If you don't want it anymore, you can just cancel before those 30 days. Audible's really cool. I use it often. You can just download audiobooks. There's thousands of audiobooks. There's a bunch of Star Wars ones. All of the new ones come out. There's the Last Jedi novelization. Is coming out in 4 days. I think. 4 days. Yeah. And I already have that pre-ordered on Audible, and you should also. So if you want to listen to that for free and keep that audiobook whether or not you pay for it, go to audibletrial.com/StarWarsAfterHours. Get that free trial. It helps us out and it helps you out because you get to listen to the Star Wars The Last Jedi novelization. Novelization. One of those. Also, mycomicshop.com. Go to the banner on our website, StarWarsAfterHours.com, and click on it and make your purchase. So thank you. I'll talk to you hopefully next week. We're going to try to get it more regular. And if we're not able to coordinate something, we'll most likely do one of us. We'll do a solo episode or get a guest or whatever. I won't tell you how the sausage is made. So you guys have a great night. I'll see you next time.
So be it, Jedi. He's no good to me dead.